Hello and welcome to The Shane Show. I'm Shane Connick. Today we have another special guest coming on to the show. This person was both a basketball and baseball player at Wagner College in Staten Island, New York. Then a year after graduating, he became the school's head baseball coach. A season later, started to coach basketball, and he became an assistant coach at Siena College under Mike Dean. Years later, 1989, he returned to Wagner as its head basketball coach, a position that he held for 10 years, through 1999. And then, for the last 20 years or so, he's become a broadcaster, primarily for the NBA's Brooklyn Nets on WFAN Sports Radio 66, alongside Chris Carino. Here he is, Mr. Tim Capstraw. Capper, great to see you. Thank you for coming on to the show today.
Great to be here, Shane. Man, you're doing great stuff.
Appreciate it. So you were saying you got a lot of camps going on earlier before we came on the air, and I know that you run a lot of basketball camps, you always have, and you're also running a sports broadcasting camp. But now, with the pandemic, obviously, what kind of basketball camps are you running?
Yeah, no, let me tell you, this is as detailed and as hard as I have ever worked on camp. I've been doing camps for forever, 35, 40 years, right? And I love it. And about a month ago, I had to make a decision, are you going to run camp or are you going to back off with all the coronavirus and COVID-19, all everything going on. And about a month ago, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. And the energy was pretty positive. So I said, something, I think there's a window here, because people were asking me, people want to go to camp. They want to know what to do with their kids. And I committed to it. And we're going to do a great job and keep it as safe as can be. But I tell you what, the preparation for it is unbelievable. And I got 6 weeks of basketball camp, and I don't know if the attendance will be great like it always is, but I think if we can show people how much we care and how safe we are, there's a good chance. I had to move a lot of my camp outdoors, like as you can imagine. Can't have the kids play inside. Got to keep them safe. And this is quite the challenge as far as basketball camp.
Are you going to have them wearing masks or anything like that?
Yeah, well, whenever they're not socially distanced from anybody. And I'm going to say, I don't think it's going to be in their best interest to have them moving and wearing masks. You know what I mean? You have to make some decisions then. I want to get them outdoors as much as I possibly can and create it an outdoor basketball court. But then I look tomorrow, opening day of camp, I see rain. It's going to rain all day. It's going to be some clever, a lot of teaching, going slow, contest, a lot of fundamentals. I'm going to go slow with them and really teach the kids, and hopefully it'll work out.
So I know obviously you run these basketball camps. You've been announcing basketball. You played basketball, coached basketball for years. You've always been a basketball guy. But in the beginning, I was talking about how you were also a baseball player at Wagner and coached the baseball team for a year. Now, I understand that in 1981, the fall of 1981, when you were at Wagner in baseball, the team was ranked number 1 in the Northeast, number 23 in the country, according to Baseball America. And I understand also that despite the fact that the school provided funding for charter buses, that your team opted to take yellow school buses on gate to go to away games that you guys called the War Wagon.
Yeah, that's great. Your research is unbelievable. I forgot all about this stuff. That's right. I remember playing and having some very big games in that year and beating Seton Hall. I remember I had moved up from being like the third pitcher, and I was the number 1 pitcher that year. And I was getting crushed. My ERA was way over 10. Like it was about 12. And I remember coming into the game against Seton Hall. This is a regional game. And because it was a big deal, they published like your stats. And like my ERA was, I don't know, it might have been 17 or something like that. And I come in the game and bases were loaded. And I look like I'm a pitcher. I was about 6'2", 200 pounds. I looked like I could really throw hard. But I really didn't throw that hard. I had good location. And then I started loving the fact that good hitters don't like the ball pitch slowly to them. They get frustrated, you know. So I had bases loaded against him. And a guy named John Morris, who ended up playing for the Cardinals and I got out of the inning. It was like incredibly lucky, and it was ironic. And we ended up winning that game. And you're right, we had the war wagon. I can't believe it, man. I would not have known that. You can go deep into your archives, Shane. You're showing me something right there. But I had, I did pretty well in baseball, but not that year, but that particular game. And during that run of going deep into the regionals, that one game was really special. I got kind of lucky, but I got hit a lot that year too. Boy, I'm still shook up from it. Yeah.
I heard that year there was also a time when you guys won. I think when you beat Seton Hall and you won 4 games, you played in 6 days. You had 4 wins against all top type teams.
Yeah. No, it was out at St. John's. It was like a regional tournament. And it was I think, to go to the College World Series. I think we lost the last possible game to go to the World Series, but we were a good team, and it was a great experience. And I liked it a lot. There's some great, but you know what's amazing in sports is that I don't remember the games that well, but I remember the people. You know what I mean? You remember I remember the guys on the team. I remember how funny they were and how baseball's fun. You know, there's a lot of downtime. During that time, you could really yell at the pitchers a lot. You're allowed to like rag on the pitchers. I couldn't believe some of the things that were said to me. Sometimes I'd have to step off the mound because I started laughing, and it's like but they've calmed that part of it down. But some great memories. Thanks for bringing it up.
Of course. And with that said, now in college, you had a great experience with baseball. Seems like a great experience with basketball as well. You became a baseball coach immediately, head baseball coach of Wagner. What made you then decide to become an assistant basketball coach under Mike Dean at Siena and start to switch over to becoming a basketball guy?
Yeah, well, now, I always wanted to be a basketball guy. And what happened was I was a basketball guy right out of college at Wagner. And the second year I was there, the coach had resigned before the end of the season. And I had a pretty good rep as far as being a young guy that could be a coach, pretty much decent respect from the players. So they asked me to be the coach. They kind of were in a bit of a bind. I was coaching guys I played with, but it was wonderful experience. I had good discipline. We won enough, but we weren't great, but it was a great experience. And then from coaching baseball, but that was kind of as a favor, kind of last minute. Oh, what are we going to do? Maybe we can get Capper to coach the team. And they got it. And it was great because it gave me head coaching experience, even though it wasn't the same sport. Then I went up to Siena. We were really good. Then I was able to get back to Wagner as a very young head coach in college basketball.
As a matter of fact, the youngest, I believe you were 28 when you took over the Wagner head coaching job and 23 when you took over the Wagner baseball job.
Yeah, no, I was young, but, I was also probably the youngest guy after 10 years to be fired too. You know what I mean? Like, so the story isn't that great. You know what I mean? So sometimes you get your breaks, you got to take them, like that was my time because I got hired at Wagner because I knew everybody. It would have been my one job, my shot. So I was very fortunate to get that opportunity. And for a while it went pretty well, but I'll be honest with you, the last few years, I had a feeling I might get fired, and I was. They treated me very fairly, though. It was a great experience.
So at that point, as you started to look and see that your coaching career might not be panning out exactly how you envisioned it, what made you decide to go a different route and become a broadcaster?
Well, I wanted to. I had known the last couple of years before when my coaching was going a little sour last couple of years, I started doing NCAA tournament shows. You know how they have studio shows, and people used to tell me, "Hey, Capper, you're full of crap. You'd be great at this. You're perfect for this. You got a lot of baloney. You'd be perfect doing this." So I kind of kept that in the back of my mind, that if I had the opportunity, I would love to be able to be a broadcaster. But I was not a big name guy. So that's where maybe it was more difficult for me to get my foot in the door and I had to kind of prove to people that I could do the job. So took me a few years to get going. Worked a lot of lower leagues, and then I got my nice break with the Nets.
But still, at that point, all you've been doing was playing basketball, coaching basketball. Obviously, if you were just to sit there and kind of analyze basketball as a guy who's been so involved in the game, that probably wouldn't be the hardest thing for you to do. But with broadcasting, there's so much more that goes into it. You might have to be writing things. You might have to be interviewing athletes and asking them questions. You might have to be reading off of teleprompters maybe before a game or something. So in what ways did you kind of prepare to be able to do that aspect of the job when you had no experience really before?
This is what I tell everybody too. Everybody said, "Oh, I was good at being on TV and talking, but I didn't know how to do the job as far as being a game analyst." So I would, and again, nobody was offering me a job. My first year, I only got one game to do. I got one game. I begged everybody, I got one game. And I prepared for that for months. But I would set up every day a situation where I'd be watching the games on TV, and I would, after the play would happen, I would say why the play happened. I would work in it. Then I had set up on the other side I had a little bit of a studio where I would talk into the camera and be able to learn how to talk into the camera. I even bought an old-fashioned, which would be like a big thing that would be like a teleprompter. And it was a great way to do it. And I learned and I worked at it every day, and it worked out great.
You were always a basketball guy. We've been talking about played basketball, coached basketball at the Division I level. But when you went to the NBA for the first time, it was as a broadcaster. But what was it like to still be working with an NBA team and being behind the scenes, regardless of what the role was? As a basketball guy, how awesome was that experience?
As awesome as you would think. I was in awe. I had to act like I was cool and I kind of knew what I was doing. And I was, you know how we always tell you, fake it till you make it? I was faking it. I was so thrilled to be there, so in awe, so like, I can't believe how lucky I am. And that's kind of how I feel now. I haven't lost that, which is really, everybody gets a kick out of that. I really haven't lost that. And it was just amazing. The one thing I had to get used to was the game it was hard to get the broadcast, but I hadn't, I'd been a college guy. The rules in the NBA even, five, on the fifth foul, you getting a bonus and all that. Like, it was faking me out for a while. Fortunately, I worked in the beginning and still do with the best play-by-play guy in the world, in my opinion, in Chris Carino. So he was just like, he carries me now every night. Back then, he was just making sure, I was kind of finding my way. I just needed a bunch of reps. It's kind of the same things I say to you guys. You got to get your reps. The more you do things, the better you get. That's why you're doing a show right now. You're just doing you're working on your skills. You're getting better all the time. And it's the same thing that happened with me. I got more and more comfortable as time went on.
And also, you've worked for the Nets primarily for these years, the New Jersey Nets, then the Brooklyn Nets. When you were growing up, did you find yourself, I know you're from Utica, New York, you went to Staten Island. Were you a Nets fan, or did you even have a favorite NBA team?
No, but I watched everything. I was a nutcase as far as basketball. The ABA Nets, I knew well. I knew that team well. I had Melchione at guard. You had Dr. J. You had Billy Pulse. You had all these guys. Super John Williamson. I would watch games, but I wasn't necessarily a Nets fan. I don't know. I grew up. I'm old enough to I was such a fan at a young age that I even remember, and I was only 9 years old, but the 69 Knicks winning it was a big deal. I think it was on tape delay or whatever, but it was a big, big deal. Then they won it again, I think in 71 or 73. And it was, I was a fan of that, but I was also a fan of just basketball. There would only be, back then, there was only like 1 or 2 games a week. So you would wait for, I was a UCLA fan for college. I loved everything about them. They were on all the time, but it was, when I say all the time, that was like, well, they played Saturday, and they're like, well, they play again next Saturday. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't get college that often. You didn't get the pros. You didn't have the league pass, but you got, because I was an upstate New York kid, you got the Knicks probably on MSG, if that was it. And then you got the Nets on whatever the station, probably Channel 11 or something, went up there. So I was able to follow them that way.
And so now you've been working in the NBA for the past 20 years or so. You have most NBA fans. They can watch a game and they can see how players conduct themselves on the court. They can see how players conduct themselves in their interactions with the media. But overall, they don't really know the players in the sense that you do as someone who is working alongside of them to some extent. You know, you've been working with these players on the Nets, traveling with them, getting to know them. Same thing with players who are coming in visiting. With that said, when you think back to all the players, particularly on the Nets, who you've worked with over the last 20 years or so, who comes to mind as some of the funniest players who you've gotten to know?
Oh, funny. Yeah, I don't, funniest guys. I'm not as close to the players as you might think. I don't make it a point to overdo that. I have to I kind of give them their space. They all know sort of who you are. They know who you are, but when you see them, they don't want to like talk that much. So I don't overdo it with them. Brook Lopez always made me. So there's a guy named Jabari Smith that was hysterical. I don't know if you remember him, but he played for the Nets for a couple of years. In fact, his son is a top 5 high school recruit, I think, in the next year's class. I always thought he would be a wonderful globetrotter. He was 6'10". He had all the tricks. He was fun. The guy, Anthony Johnson, was a guard on those Jason Kidd teams. He was a backup guard who had the greatest laugh I've ever heard. He was, I could always hear him laughing, and he was funny that way. Brian Scalabrini's Brian Scalabrini, right? Everybody knows Scal. He's a wonderful guy. And yet I know them, but I don't want to act like I like hang out with them, know them that well. You get to know the guys. Brook Lopez, because he was there for so long, such a beautiful guy. I'm so happy for him right now. But for me to say, there's all teams got funny guys, but I kind of knew it from a distance, to tell you the truth.
That makes sense. Capper, thank you for coming on to the Shane Show today. It's always great to talk to you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into this edition of the Shane Show. I'll see you next time. Catch you on the flip side.